What's up, YouTube? Your boy back once again with another sport topic here to talk some basketball. Orlando Magic basketball. You already know what it is. Now that the dust has settled on the Desmond Bane trade, what does this really mean for the Orlando Magic and the Eastern Conference? Because is the NBA on notice right now? Like, seriously, is the NBA on notice right now? Let's talk about it. So as everybody know, the Orlando Magic pulled off the first big trade of the summer by acquiring shooting guard Desmond Bane from the Memphis Grizzlies, pairing him up with Paolo Franz Wagner, and Jalen Suggs, and also Wendell Carter as well. And that's pretty much going to be the Magic starting five for the foreseeable future for this year, unless something crazy happens this season or this summer, which I really don't expect something crazy to happen to affect the Magic starting five. Who knows what they can do to help that bench out? But as far as the starting five, I don't think that nothing else is going to happen to affect the starting five. So I feel like that's going to be your starting five for the foreseeable future. But what does that mean for the Orlando Magic, and what does that mean for the NBA completely, specifically the Eastern Conference? Well, this year, Eastern Conference is going to be a very wide open conference. This Eastern Conference is probably going to be the most wide open it's been since LeBron's early years. Well, I guess the early years in Cleveland. I think most of when he came back from Miami, it was in Cleveland again. Even though you knew exactly what was going on with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers and how he's able to go to the finals, but when it comes to everybody else in the Eastern Conference is going to be completely wide open because you know what's going on in Boston. They're not going to have Tatum, and there's a potential that they might end up moving on from Jaylen Brown by the trade deadline. We don't know what's going to happen with Giannis. We don't know what's going on with Cleveland. So you got Indiana, you got New York, you do got Detroit on the rise. I don't know what's going to go on really with Philadelphia and the other teams going around the Eastern Conference. It doesn't seem like it's a real strong conference as far as like these top teams are going to be extremely dominant. So what I mean by wide open, not saying the conference is going to be weak. What I do mean is that anybody can be in the Eastern Conference Finals. You can really pull two names out of a hat of those teams I just named, and you would not be surprised. Would anybody be surprised if any of those teams that I just named realistically are in the Eastern Conference Finals? Would anybody be surprised? Obviously, if it's Indiana and New York, they were just in the Eastern Conference Finals. But Boston and Cleveland, like would you Detroit and the Orlando Magic? Will you be surprised if one of the two of those teams win the Eastern Conference Finals? It's not a year where it's going to automatically be Boston in Milwaukee, because normally that's what you really think the Eastern Conference Finals is going to be. Boston, Milwaukee, Boston, New York, Boston, whatever. Indiana's been the last 2 years. It's like, so do you really think this is only pigeonholed to one or two teams? No, I think it's wide open. And the Orlando Magic understood that, realized that what I've been championing for the last couple months is to realize who you are before the injuries. I've been saying this during the trade deadline, but the Magic and Jeff Wellman need to understand and realize who they were and realize the time is now, and you have to make big boy moves. You have to make championship contending moves. There's difference between a championship contending organization and a championship hopeful organization. You look at what those teams out there, San Antonio did. They seen Wemby. Oh, we got one of those dudes out there. Let's go get De'Aaron Fox. And now they're in conversations, could potentially get KD or even Giannis if those moves happen to be made. And they have high draft picks. So when you see stuff like that, and you have a player like Paolo, who I believe is a future All NBA, future All NBA first team, and also an MVP candidate, I feel like Paolo can be the best player on the championship level team. I really feel like Franz could be a perennial All-Star as well. Jalen Suggs, we see him as an all defensive player. So you want to add in somebody else into that mix. And they go out there and they add Desmond Bane. Now, granted, I want us to add a point guard because I thought that point guard was going to help out this offense, and not really just to get rid of Suggs, because you could take Suggs and shift him over and move him as the two guard and get an actual pretty good ball handling point guard, a primary ball handling point guard. I was looking at more so like that, but if you had to move on from Jalen Suggs, I would have been all right with it if they got the right player. But the Magic and Jeff Webman showed you that no. We like Jalen Suggs, and we like him at the point guard position. What we're going to do, we're going to get Desmond Bane. And I asked people on Twitter, Do you think that Desmond Bane could be this generation's version of Dennis Scott? Can he be this year's? Can he be this generation's 3D? Again, he's a 3 and D player. He's a guy who plays defense. He's gonna play defense on the other side of the court, and he's gonna be able to let them threes fly. He gonna be able to sit back there and snipe them threes. And he's not the primary option. All the attention is gonna be on Paolo. All the other attention is gonna be on Franz. So he's gonna be able to get good open looks. Probably better looks than he even got in Memphis, even though he had Ja. Ja barely plays. And I like Ja. I like Ja Morant a lot. But out there, be like, not say he's the only option out there in Memphis, but he did have a lot of, pressure on him. And he's a guy who's a career 41 3-point shooter, a guy who shoots with like 7 threes a game. So he shoots a lot of threes. So it's not like he only shoots. He's a 41% 3-point shooter, but he only shoots like 3 threes a game. So like his numbers is kind of skewed because he doesn't even shoot that many. He makes them, but he also doesn't shoot a lot. He doesn't shoot a high volume. He shoots a pretty good amount. He can shoot the mid range as well. So he has a mid range game, and he can shoot from 3. Again, is he a perfect player? No, he's not a perfect player. Obviously, he's not a perfect player. These are guys under contract for the next couple of years, and while the Eastern Conference could be very, very scary for the Orlando Magic, be very, very scary for the Eastern Conference because we got these guys under contract for the foreseeable future. I mean, like I said, Paolo is going to sign an extension sometime this summer. Suggs has already signed the extension. Same thing with with Franz, and you have Bane under contract until 2029. Now his contract gets expensive every year. I mean, this upcoming season, his contract is at 36 million. Then after that, in 2027, it's at 39, and 2028, it's at 42. And in 2029, it's at 44. So it keeps going up and up and up to almost 10. By the end of his contract, you're going to be close to be paying them you're going to be paying them $8 million more than what you're paying them right now. So in 2029, his contract value is going to go up by $8 million from what you're going to be paying him this season. That is a pretty hefty tag. If I'm not mistaken, I think this puts the Magic right up against the second apron. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's somewhere along there, right up against the second apron. But it's the cost. It's the cost of doing business. It really is. It's the cost of doing business. And when you pairing them up against a guy with and Paolo that was averaged 25 points, and then Franz who averaged 24 points last season, and Paolo who went out in the playoffs like gangbusters. You know that Paolo averaged 29 points in that series against Boston. He was clearly the best player on the court. And Franz actually wasn't a slouch either. Even though Franz took some shots that were questionable, Franz still ended up giving you 25, 4, and 6 in the playoff game. I mean, 25, 4, and 5. I'm sorry. 25, 4, and 5 in the playoff series against Boston. 25 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. And Paolo gave you 29, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists. So obviously those guys won the problem, and you lost in 5. Now again, Jalen Suggs wasn't there, and I do think that how the Magic were able to stay afloat with Paolo and Franz both being gone, but you still had Jalen Suggs. And when Paolo came back, the Magic were 22-16 and was 4th in the East, and then proceeded to lose 5 of their next 6 games. They went 1-5 in the next 6 games. When then Franz came back, and they closed out the season 18-20. They ended up being the 7th seed, hosting the playoff game. Luckily, you beat the Hawks in the playoff game, playing game, and was able to be the 7th seed going into the playoffs. And you did all that without Jalen Suggs. But the first part of the season, the 22-16, you did that without Paolo. Outside of 5 games, I think Paolo played 5 games to start the season off, and you did half of that without almost half of that without Franz. But the person you had the majority of the time with is Jalen Suggs. So I feel like that was part of the reason why. And you also had Mo as well. That's also part of the reason why they felt like, hey, we need to keep Jalen. Again, I was of the mindset and under the belief that we need to get a primary point guard, and you shift and you move Jalen to the 2 guard. But keeping Jalen at the one guard and keeping Jalen at the one, especially him being an all, remember he was all defensive player last year, all NBA on defense last year. So you want to see more out of that. And I guess they're like, hey, if we give you a better cast, if we give you a primary shooter in Bane, and obviously a full season of Paolo and Franz, a full season that you can get in today's NBA because people are not playing 82 games like they were doing back in the 90s and the early to mid 2000s, got load management, stuff like that. So it's a tough ask to ask a superstar in this day and age to play a full 82 games. You probably won't even get 70. You're probably getting right at 70. You're probably going to get, and that's a healthy season. We're not talking about getting hurt. We're talking about a healthy season. You're talking about guys playing 70 games. So healthy, playing as much as you possibly can play in today's version of the NBA. You give him that, you're going to see the best out of Jalen Suggs. So I do think that I'm not going to say the clock is ticking on Jalen Suggs, but we're going to find out very quickly within the next 3 years how Jalen Suggs can really handle being the primary point guard because I think the excuses are going to be out because you got Paulo, you got Franz, and now you got an actual legitimate shooting guard. Because I'm glad they moved on from KCP. Didn't like the move to begin with, but I'm glad they moved on from KCP. It didn't really fit. And I do think they need to help out their bench a little bit more. I think we need scoring off of the bench, especially you losing Cole. Even though Cole wasn't consistent, like I like Cole a lot, but he wasn't consistent. It was games that Cole go out there, he'll ball, and there's times that Cole wouldn't show up at all. And I didn't even mean to do that, but it really is. Cole will ball or he won't show up at all. And I do want them to get somebody off the bench. I don't know how realistic it can be for them to possibly get Malik Monk. I would like the Kill Alexander Walker. You have to probably use a mid-level exception, but because of the contract that you just got, that you just acquired with Desmond Bane, I don't know I don't really know exactly if that is realistic. It could be pie in the sky. It could just be wishful thinking. But I would think that a player like that, of that caliber, like a Malik Monk or like a Nikhil Alexander Walker, I would love to have Nikhil Alexander Walker. I wanted him in the 2019, well, 19? Yeah, the 2019 draft. I wanted him over Chumo Kiki. I didn't want Chumo Kiki. I didn't even know who Chumo Kiki was. I was saying all before the draft and then after the draft how I wanted to kill Alexander Walker, and it didn't work out. It didn't work out in New Orleans. We seen him actually play well and step up and play big in big time minutes in the Western Conference Finals against Oklahoma City out there in Memphis. I mean, out there with the T Wolves. So I do think that you could put him in this position and he can pay off you dividends. Now that you got somebody like Desmond Bane, is probably more of a back of seat than it was out there even in with the T Wolves because of your Paulo, your Franz, and your Desmond Banes now. Because I think that those are going to be your primary score. I think those are going to be your primary scorers, and I think that Jalen is going to have to move more so into that defensive and facilitating role. But I do think that we have a good defensive backcourt. That's why I'm very intrigued about it. If you just look at the player itself, forget about the trade, because I talked about the trade in the last video. So forget about the trade and the compensation. When you look at the actual players on the court, I think this makes this team a very competitive team in the Eastern Conference, and I feel like they're going to be a top 4 team. I feel like healthy they would have been a top 4 team last year anyway. If Paulo and Franz played the entirety of the season, I feel like they would have been in the top 4 in the Eastern Conference. Granted, I think in retrospect and in hindsight 2020, I'm glad that wasn't the case, because if that was the case, we probably wouldn't have this move. If you want to be completely honest, we probably wouldn't have this move because they would just ran it back. Because you probably would have got the 4 seed and maybe had a good favorable matchup and win a playoff series, and then lose in the next round. And we'll just run it back next year and we'll just get better. But with this move right here, with them doing what the season ended up being the way it ended up being, and you made the move that you just made, I think this move actually push you into the category and push you into the situation where this can legitimately be a team that is competing for the Eastern Conference. And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about competing to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm talking about competing to actually win the Eastern Conference and actually make an NBA Finals. I think if Paolo makes the jump that I feel like he's going to make, because I feel like Paolo is going to be an all NBA player next year. I feel like he's going to be a top 15 player. He's going to be all NBA. Might not be first team all NBA. Might not even be second. It might not even be second team all NBA. It could just be just third team all NBA. I feel like that he's going to be an all NBA player. I feel like Franz is going to be at the cusp of being an all NBA player if he's not one. Both of them can end up being third team all NBA. Or Paulo could be second team all NBA and Franz is third team all NBA. Whatever. I feel like that they're both going to be in that mark. Obviously, both of them are going to be all stars. And I feel like just that growth alone, and you add in a Desmond Bane, I do feel like in the way that we're going to be able to play defense, because I think that we're going to be able to suffocate and smother people on defense, because obviously our issue was offense. No matter how good the defense was last year, our issue was the offensive side of the ball. That was our issue. Again, 30th in points, 27th in efficiency. Again, shots attempted 29th, shots made 29th, 22nd in 2% made, 30th in threes made. In percentage of threes, 30th. Like, our offense was horrific. It was horrendous. It was atrocious. And I think that our defense was top tier. That's the reason why you was able to go 41 and 41. That's the reason why you was able to compete the way you was able to compete, because your defense was good enough to do that. Your defense was damn good. Your offense will fail you short. And you add in the play, and again, I think that Desmond Bane is a player that fits what Jamal Mosley wants to do. He still wants to play defense. He still wants to run the defensive side of the ball, run defensive side of the court. And he really didn't gave too much attention to the offensive side. And it showed because of how clunky the offense was. That's part of the reason why I wanted a primary ball handler. I wanted an actual facilitator to help out the offense so the offense wouldn't be so clunky. However, in doing that, you bring in somebody like Desmond Bane, who I do think opens up the floor and opens up the court for Paolo and Franz. And I think that Paolo and Franz actually opened up the court for him, because I think they're going to give him better shots as well. And I think he's going to be able to snipe him. That's why I brought up the whole Dennis Scott situation, because, hey, Shaq, Penny, Nick Anderson took all the tension away. 3D was able to 3D was able to let them three bombs fly. So I feel like Desmond Bane could potentially do the same thing. Kind of similar to Rashard Lewis back in the Dwight era, my favorite era of the Orlando Magic, my favorite team, the 2009 team, the last team that went to the NBA Finals from Orlando. Able to sit back there and let them threes fly. Able to go out there and shoot, because you surrounded Dwight by all those shooters. We ain't surrounded Paolo by a whole bunch of shooters, because as of right now, we only got one. But I do think that does put Bane in a better situation, and it puts the Magic in general in a better situation. And because of that, I feel like that puts us in a situation where the Eastern Conference is right there for the taking, especially what's going on the rest of the NBA and the rest of the Eastern Conference. The Eastern Conference is right there for the Magic to take. And I feel like that a year from now, we could be sitting up there in the Eastern Conference Finals appearance, and potentially next June, we're watching Orlando Magic basketball instead of just talking about Orlando Magic basketball. Like, subscribe if you haven't, comment below if you haven't, click that bell, get more videos. I holla.